You ever been attracted by a meaningless challenge to a goal that seems just out of reach? The 2016 Doom Reboot single-player campaign has 5 difficulty levels. The first 3 are I'm Too Young to Die, Hurt Me Plenty, and Ultraviolence, representing easy, medium, and hard. Then, above that, is Nightmare. On Nightmare mode, health, armor, and ammo is scarce. Enemies become much more aggressive and inflict hugely more damage, to the point where a lowly imp can kill you in one melee attack, right from the beginning of the game. Then above that is Ultra Nightmare, featuring that highest difficulty in addition to permadeath, meaning that one death at any point in the game will delete your save file entirely, forcing you to start over from the very beginning. This mode got a lot of publicity before the game's official launch, as reportedly not one of the game's developers or playtesters could beat it. Of course, some talented players accomplished the task shortly after Doom's release, which tempted me. Could I overcome this absurdly difficult mode and do something the devs couldn't? Yes, but it was hard. Here it is. So this video is my self-indulgent proof to no one other than myself, because who cares, but proof nonetheless. This is the final level of Doom on Ultra Nightmare and the result of a lot of struggle and improvement. Just the final level because I didn't have the hard drive space to record all 6 or so hours of a practiced Doom run. Also, keep an eye out for another feature unique to Ultra Nightmare, Doomslayer helmets placed around the map where other players have died attempting this feat. They show the name of the player and the date and cause of death. There are notably fewer of these helmets in the later levels, of course. The reason I wanted to make this commentary video is due to the surprising lack of content on the subject, especially post-game release. Doom has sold over 2 million copies on Steam alone, I'm sure millions more on console, there's 2,600 people playing it on Steam right now, 3 years after its initial release, and nearly no one has beaten its hardest difficulty? There's a handful of successful playthroughs on YouTube, some with additional challenges thrown on top of Ultra Nightmare. There's a Eurogamer article where the writer speaks to a streamer and speedrunner who had beaten it early on, and finally there's a funny Kotaku article about a husband and father regretting the time he invested to conquer the game. This guy being the only writer I could find who actually accomplished the task themselves. There's also several forum posts criticizing the difficulty of Ultra Nightmare mode, likely written by people unable to overcome it. You'll find some guides and tips and tricks around the internet, none of which are very complete. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert by any stretch, but I'd still like to contribute what I can in this commentary. Doom gives no reward for completion of Ultra Nightmare, and I don't mind that. Locking content or an achievement behind a challenge that a tiny fraction of players will beat would be pretty evil for completionists and trophy hunters out there. An Ultra Nightmare achievement does exist though. It's called a Toe into Madness and has been earned by 2% of Doom players on Steam. You get it for beating the first level of Doom on Ultra Nightmare. For those unfamiliar, the first level of Doom is just like 5 minutes long. So, the only true reward for an Ultra Nightmare victory is bragging rights, or a whole YouTube video if you're a little too proud of yourself. Speaking of that first level though, it is pretty challenging. Early on in an Ultra Nightmare run, particularly levels 1 through 4 out of 13, you're so weak, so vulnerable that one minuscule misstep will end your life. You can't toss a stick without smacking a common imp, and they'll decimate you and your stick with their fricking laser-guided heat-seeking homing fireballs that do 75 damage, or nearly all your health in those first few levels. You have to play pretty much flawlessly at the beginning. Later on, however, it's more about playing smart and consistent, managing your surroundings, and not doing anything stupid. By the time you get to the last 5 levels, you should have enough health, armor, and ammo to make a mistake or two. Well, it depends on the mistake. Slip and fall off a cliff or into an energy field or into a moving vehicle or a stomp from a Baron of Hell or a bite from a Cacodemon is instant death. So let's talk strategy. I'll go over some general advice and then some specific tips for anyone hellbent on a run themselves. Of course, the single most important thing is practice. I played through every level numerous times on regular Nightmare difficulty until I could consistently get through without dying. If you skip that step and go right into Ultra Nightmare, you really won't get a chance to repeatedly practice the boss fights, tough jumps, and harder kill rooms. Plus, you'll be likely to get frustrated by dying over and over on the first few levels and be unprepared for the later ones. Like anything, practice is important. Also important is just being an experienced first-person shooter player. I have a lot of hours in PC FPS games like Counter-Strike, so it's not as though I had to learn how to aim like some people may have to. Not that you need excellent aim in Doom. Demons usually aren't hard to hit, and just keeping your crosshair level and pointing roughly the right direction is more important than hitting crazy flick headshots. For hardware, a gaming mouse with a decent optical sensor and a large mouse pad definitely help. I have a Logitech G703 mouse and a Giganto SteelSeries QCK Plus mousepad, and the fairly low aiming sensitivity of 1.6 in-game at 800 DPI. And a Logitech G Pro mechanical keyboard with appropriately red lights, but you can game on almost any keyboard, as long as it has RGB, of course. Ultra Nightmare is possible with a controller thanks to some solid aim assist, but if you have a capable PC, I'd absolutely choose that over a console. Your computer should really be able to run Doom above 60 frames per second. As you can see from the little gray number in the top left, if you're watching this on a big enough screen, my PC runs Doom at around 80 FPS on lowest graphics settings at 1080p, though that can dip into the 50s in certain areas with a lot of action on screen. I managed to get through the first level of Ultra Nightmare on my old computer that got about 30 FPS at a reduced resolution, but it was far from ideal. Would not recommend. A high refresh rate monitor also helps, but is absolutely not required. I have every graphics setting turned on lowest to maximize performance, with the exception of anti-aliasing on TSSAA because of the complete removal of jagged edges at a low FPS cost. Also, side note, if your PC is not running Doom well, changing the graphics API to Vulkan can definitely help depending on your configuration. For key bindings, having every weapon on quickly accessible keys is very important and something you'll miss out on with using a controller or the weapon wheel. For example, by default the Gauss Cannon and Chain Gun are bound to 7 and 8 respectively, which is too much of a stretch for most people's hands to hit quickly. I use the Gauss Cannon super frequently towards the end of the game, so it's on B, which is right where my thumb rests. Putting it and the Super Shotgun, the two weapons you'll probably have to switch to the quickest on close keys or even spare mouse buttons, is a good idea. Don't use the mouse wheel for weapons, please. I know you think you can, but you probably can't, so don't. Another piece of advice that's going to make me sound like the Wii health and safety screen is to take frequent breaks between every level if necessary. The longer I play without sort of resetting my brain, the more likely I am to play on autopilot and not think through my actions, which is bad. Maybe not everyone has this. Some of the normal Doom gameplay you might be used to starts to break apart in Ultra Nightmare. For example, glory killing, one of Doom's iconic mechanics, has to be used very sparingly. While you're in the animation of ripping off one body part or another, other demons can cluster around you or charge up attacks. Further, if you're running up to a demon for a finisher and their staggered state wears off, you're now in melee range of something that can probably kill you in 1 or 2 smacks. And even when you do pull off a successful glory kill, you're only rewarded with 5 HP, which gets you nowhere. In fact, killing a demon normally when you're at low HP will drop much more health and additional ammo than a glory kill would, and that will keep happening until you return to a certain health threshold, meaning you can heal higher if you keep killing enemies while injured. A big risk, but potentially a smart one. Back on that 5 HP from glory kills thing, note that all health and armor pickups yield way fewer resources on Nightmare. On medium difficulty, the little healths give 5 HP. On Nightmare, you get 1 HP, as if you weren't pressed to begin with. Moving on, learn to prioritize certain upgrades. Early in the game, you're weak and undergeared. You need to get the most out of every pickup. For the Argent cells, I went with the general pattern of ammo first, then health, then armor. Ammo first because, 1, you shouldn't ever have to use a less effective weapon because you ran out of shells or rockets or whatever, and 2, having your chainsaw fuel capacity increased means you can insta-kill bigger enemies. The chainsaw is super handy early on as a last resort kill the Hell Knight in the hallway kind of thing. Obviously you want to learn the locations of secrets to get both weapons early and to get as many weapon upgrade points as possible. If you need help learning paths and making specific decisions, you can always watch other people's successful runs online, but I enjoyed figuring it out mostly on my own and finding a unique playstyle. And by playstyle, I mean Gauss Cannon. It's a good idea to spend time in the early levels getting weapon masteries. For example, as soon as you get the Super Shotgun in the Argent Energy Tower, fully upgrade it so you can begin its mastery challenge. From then on, anytime you see 2 possessed or other throwaway enemies, line them up to get double kills for the mastery. The mastery being firing the super shotgun twice before reloading, which I think is all but required for some later stages and boss fights. Imps are super annoying, and the combat shotgun's explosive shot is the perfect counter, being able to kill them in one direct hit. In level 1, when you're given the first mod, choose the explosive shot and put all your upgrade points from levels 1 and 2 into maxing it out in the order speedy recovery, instant load, and then bigger boom. No need for upgrades on the pistol. I use the plasma gun pretty much exclusively for the stun bomb, with it being excellent for charging pinkies and Hell Knights. You can make a case for either the missiles or the scope on the assault rifle. I would recommend the lock-on burst for the rocket launcher early in your run for taking out the bigger demons. Later on, I switched to the remote detonation once you can afford taking a little self-damage here and there, and once the arenas get larger. The Gauss cannon with siege mode is essential for bigger demons and boss fights, and I strongly recommend its mobile siege mastery, though I stupidly didn't manage to get it in my run. The chain gun is powerful but a bit unwieldy. Both mods for it are good, but I don't use it that much. The BFG for me is more of a calculated rune clearer instead of a last resort in a bad situation. Knowing exactly when the Barons of Hell, Mancubi, and Cacodemons spawn is good in the later levels, so you can preemptively line up a BFG shot. And the BFG is needed on all 3 bosses. Make sure you have 2 to 3 charges stored before the boss fights. There's 3 equipment items: the frag grenade, siphon grenade, and hologram, and I pretty much don't ever use them. Any time you spend deploying them is time you're not shooting, and in a game about constantly shooting, that seems like a big loss to me. Early on, the frag grenade is decent against the weaker demons, but what is one little explosion against a giant hulking gooey cyber monster with a flamethrower? You know? The siphon grenade is alright, but honestly, if I'm at low enough health to justify using it, I don't really want to be within throwing distance of a demon. And the hologram can be a strategic choice, but you have to remember to use it on the fly. Let's talk about runes. Optimal rune choices definitely depend on your playstyle, because there's no real penalty for failing a rune trial. I see no reason not to get most of them, so you can choose at a later time. Some runes, like Savagery, can be skipped outright because you're just not going to choose it. For my choices, I like in-flight mobility a lot, especially for boss fights. Ammo boost can be an excellent choice because once upgraded, you get BFG ammo drops. Rich Get Richer is good if you just want to use weapons like the Gauss cannon and chain gun endlessly. Equipment power will make siphon grenades fill your armor, so using it paired with Rich Get Richer is a solid combo, especially against bosses. And saving throw is good too, of course. Also, if you equip Seek and Destroy before picking up Berserk, you get its benefit of effectively long-range glory kills for the duration of the power-up. Then you can switch it off afterwards, and you've lost nothing. Make sure to learn all of the Elite Guard locations for Praetor suit upgrades. For your upgrade path, get Adept and Quick Hands first. Hold off on Hot Swap until the later levels. Then I would do all the environmental resistance upgrades, certainly up to self-preservation, so one misplaced rocket doesn't end your life. Barrels of Fun can also save you from a few explosive traps later on. Power-up effectiveness upgrades are quite good. Once you get healing power, you can use power-ups as a full heal in the midst of a big kill room. Equipment system upgrades are kind of whatever to me. Like, get them, but I wouldn't choose them before the ones previously mentioned. And the area scanning ones are useless once you've memorized the locations of hidden stuff. Let's go through the demons. The Possessed can be surprisingly deadly if you accidentally back up into one, so don't do that. Imps are probably the #1 source of my deaths. That explosive shotgun shell is your best friend. Later on, once you have plenty of ammo, I recommend firing a rocket over their heads and then remote detonating it once you're out of the area of effect. Imps are one of the biggest reasons you have to keep moving, keep kiting in Doom. You stop for a second and 3 fireballs are on their way. The possessed soldiers with guns are only bad if they hit you with one of their charged up shots. Keep an eye out for when they're preparing those. The possessed security guys with shields are annoying, but hit them with the plasma gun stun bomb and they're sitting ducks. Hellraisers have never given me any trouble. Hell Knights are tough at every stage. You have to keep your distance. In the early game, try to keep 3 chainsaw fuel things in reserve so you can drop a Hell Knight in a pinch. Summoners are obnoxious and should be targeted before they call their friends. Rocket launcher with lock-on burst is a good solution for when they keep dashing off. The Revenant usually aren't so bad. Avoid glory killing them from behind, which will make them explode and possibly hurt you. Pinkies are very dangerous, they come flying around corners and hit hard. Once you obtain the double jump boosts, you can simply hop over them and then slap a booty with one super shotgun blast point blank. Spectres are really only bad when you don't expect them. Once you memorize the areas where they appear, I don't see them as being too challenging, since unlike regular Pinkies, you can kill them head on. The rocket launcher, Gauss cannon, chain gun are all sufficient. Mancubi aren't too bad, since they're slow moving and rarely hit you at range if you're paying attention. They mostly just serve as bullet sponges. Watch out for when they jump up on a platform though, that can be startling. Cyber Mancubi, however, are much worse. They take so many hits, don't have a nice eyeball to shoot, and their melee attack is pretty much run-ending. My only advice is to stay away and double jump over them if necessary, but don't land in the electric goo. Cacodemons are even worse. You kind of can't get hit by them. Their bite does 200 damage, and their bile-spewing attack, while not always a one-hit, will smear your vision, making you extremely vulnerable. Fortunately, they are an easy target, and one charged shot from a Gauss cannon or 2 lock-on rocket bursts will bring them down. Learn where they spawn and pre-fire them like I did earlier in this video. Lost Souls are irritating. As soon as you hear their audio cue, it's time to switch to the old shotgun. You can easily pick them off from a distance with the Heavy Assault Rifle's scope mod. Finally, Barons of Hell. They're bad, obviously. Don't turn your back on them, they'll pummel you like the big kid at a pillow fight. Barons are probably the best single enemy to use the BFG on, aside from bosses.
They promised me so much.
And now for the Spider Mastermind, the final but definitely not hardest boss. That title for me goes to the first phase of the Hell Guards. With enough practice, you can beat Spidey almost every time, but it's still nerve-wracking. Your 5 to 7 hour playthrough could end with its electricity if you don't get up onto a platform in time. I opt for rapidly switching between the rocket launcher and the super shotgun for maximum DPS, but then throwing in a Gauss cannon shot at times when I don't think I can land a rocket, or when the spider demon gets too close and I want to reposition. That last part is super useful against the cyber demon, but still useful here. Just jump, hold your back key, and use the knockback from the Gauss cannon to send you flying backwards if you're in danger of getting meleeed. This strategy is all about getting into a good rhythm. If the rhythm is interrupted, you can usually get a BFG shot off and get back in mode. One totally different strategy for this boss is using the Rich Get Richer rune for infinite ammo, then getting the Mobile Siege Mastery for the Gauss Cannon and just repeatedly blasting it with the Siege Mode charged shot. That would be good for people on controller or those not as good at quickly weapon switching on keyboard. But it's not as cool looking, so it's bad. Siphon grenades can also be handy at getting a little health back, but I didn't use any here. I like how you can see the helmets of our fallen Ultra Nightmare comrades floating around this final arena. And with that, the run is done, and I have won, and now it's time to sleep. I might have been 3 years late, but at least I did it. And now the sequel, Doom Eternal, will be released soon, so I guess I have to do this all over again. Can't wait. Even though I'm fairly proud of this run, it was baby mode compared to, for example, Bite Me's world record 100% completion Ultra Nightmare speedrun, linked in description, or Zomeister's pistol-only Ultra Nightmare run, also linked in description. I would be really impressed if someone could beat Ultra Nightmare on the Nintendo Switch version of the game, 720p, A low, inconsistent frame rate, and a Switch controller would be Nuttown. I'm not even sure if Ultra Nightmare is available on Switch, but I guess you could just do a One Life Nightmare run if it's not. And after that, Ultra Nightmare with a USB steering wheel, Ultra Nightmare with a Wiimote, Ultra Nightmare on a cash register, Ultra Nightmare on a newborn child. Oh, this is dumb. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. See ya.